Danny, is that your local pub? Are you doxing yourself, Danny? People are going to show up at the Friday looking for you, mate. Oh, shit. Our team didn't win that night. We came 9th, which was a bit weird as there were only 8 teams competing. I've got to know if this is actually close, because I know where Danny lives. Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. More on them in a jiffy. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brain Blaze. I am your host, Simon. What happens here? Danny writes me a script. Right here, I'm going to read it. Sam afterwards is going to edit it. And by edit, he's probably just going to add in some memes, some shit like that. This is fake facts that everyone thinks are true. We've done some of these before. We got some new ones today. Let's crack on. According to urban legends, men think about sex every 7 seconds. Obviously not. It's much more regular than that. Am I right, Peter? Working out the maths, that's quite a lot per day devoted to the single topic of planting the parsnip. Jesus, Danny. About 514 times per hour or 7,200 times per waking day. If this were true, it would be difficult to figure out how men get anything done if they can't even concentrate on climbing to the top of a ladder without getting distracted by thoughts of putting the wand into the Chamber of Secrets. It's often claimed that the statistic is rooted in genuine scientific study dating back to the Kinsey Institute's research into sexual habits in the 1940s. And it's curious how so many people seem happy to accept that it probably sounds about right. Sounds about right. It plays into the stereotypical view that men are utterly obsessed with bow. No, bow. It's not bow. No, I know what it is. Bow chicka bow bow. Oh, wait, is it bow chicka wow wow? Oh, it is. It totally is. Bow chicka bow. What's wrong with me? Bow chicka wow wow.
Why are you the way that you are?
Whilst women can't really ask to give it much thought, I'm not really sure which gender should be the most offended by this. Both genders. The published report from the Kinsey Institute said nothing of the kind. They merely claim that 54% of men think about crashing the custard truck once every day, or a few times a day. 43% of men think about it a few times per month, and 4% of men less than once a month. Wait, 1 in 20 men think about having sex less than once a month? Is that possible? Just thinking about it? That's insane.
Think, Mark! Everyone and everything you know
will fap.
43% of men think about it a few times a month. I feel like I'm some deviant now. Jesus Christ, Kinsey Institute, what the f***? That's surely going a little too far to the other extreme, as it seems to suggest that almost half of men don't think about applying the sausage at least once every day. Thank you, Danny. That is normal. That is definitely normal. I previously said in a video, I wish there was a way to do polls, and obviously there is in the community tab, but I want to be able to have a poll on a video, because there's no fucking way that if I ran a poll on this video and said, do you think about sex survey for men, do you think about sex every day? At least once a day, however briefly? Question mark.
Yes! Yes!
If that poll isn't 95% yeses, I would be very surprised. More recent studies from The Ohio State University in 2012 claim that men think about batter dipping the quantity. Jesus Christ. Danny, no! Around 19 times per day, whilst it only pops into women's heads around 10 times a day. Now that sounds more realistic, but the problem with this type of research is that it's fundamentally flawed. In the case of the Ohio State University study, 120 single men, 163 single women were given clickers and asked to press them every time they thought about burping the worm in the mole hole throughout a typical day. Well, that's a brand new one to me. But this is a bit like the game Don't Think I Just Lost the fucking game. And if you don't know what it's been months. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, someone will explain it to you in the comments. And congratulations, your life now is, you're now playing the game. You don't have a choice. If you don't want to play the game, don't read the comments. If you're purposefully attempting not to come across like an oversexed animal, you'll be consciously trying to think of anything else but sex, but this is only likely to make you think about it even more, especially because you've got a clicker in your hand that's always reminding you about sex. You also have to wonder about the honesty and the commitment of all of the participants. Having said that, one poor guy did press the clicker 388 times in one day. I'll be like, Jesus Christ, I guess I gotta flip the clicker around to 0 again because I'm not handing it in. But it's been argued that he was perhaps more of a victim of the design of the study rather than his sexual impulses. I suppose a lot depends on what exactly you're doing with your day too, and that an individual's thoughts can be very different from day to day and week to week. So whilst once every 7 seconds is surely a ridiculously exaggerated average, we may never get a proper handle on a more accurate figure on how many times per day men think about doing the horizontal greased weasel tango. Danny, you're making these up at that point. No one's ever said that before. No one's ever put that combination of 4 words together. Horizontal greased weasel tango. That's not going to be on Urban Dictionary.
7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7.
Birds reject their chicks if touched by human hands. Moving on to a slightly more helpful and practical slice of myth-busting. For several decades, parents have barked at their compassionate children for even thinking about rescuing that little bird flailing helplessly on the floor. The theory is that if you try to put the chick back in its nearby nest, the mother bird will smell the whiff of human interference and reject the tainted offspring, leaving it to starve to death in the nest. Yeah, same thing happened to me. I went to the park and an old lady touched my kid, and I was like, oh, now my kid smells of old lady. I just left her in the playground. It's better that way. She'll learn to fend for herself. She'll be fine. She'll be fine. I should go check on her.
No, I'll leave her be. I'm sure she'll be fine.
The myth may have derived from the observation that mother birds are nowhere to be seen immediately after the return of a chick, but this is often because the mother is out either hunting for food or observing the fledgling from a distance as it works on its flying skills and learns how to bird. Or it could just be that the parents don't want their kids touching dirty little birds, or perhaps even bringing them home to raise in a shoebox as a pet. Whatever the reason, the truth is that birds have a lousy sense of smell and would neither know nor care if a human had touched their offspring. They certainly wouldn't abandon their young just because they had been picked up by human hands. So, a lot of people now recommend that you should always return a little bird to its nest if you happen to come across it and it's in need of a helping hand. That's very sweet. That sounds fair enough, right? Well, no, that's actually another myth. The vast majority of birds you're likely to find on the ground are fledglings who have left the nest and are learning to do their own thing under the watchful eye of their mother. It's usually not too hard to identify a fledgling, as it will have grown its first coat of feathers and will be moving around independently and having a really good go at flapping its new wings. Your best bet is to leave the fledgling well alone to avoid temporarily scaring away the mother from observation duty. She's already got this. The only exceptions are if you can see that the fledgling is under immediate threat from a cat or dog or a saltwater crocodile, depending on your location. I felt like I was in a nature documentary. Have I told this story before? I was in like a... It was like a national park or some like that in near Cape Town, South Africa. And I was just wandering through. And then there were these really like loud birds, like really angry sounding birds. And I just look over and there's a bird's nest with these eggs in it. And then there's a snake coming towards this bird nest with these eggs in it. And these two birds are like flying there and just slamming themselves into this snake to get it away from the bird's nest. And the snake is like, it's like slithering, it's like, and eventually it goes away. But these little birds are just absolutely just like dive bombing the shit out of this snake. It was awesome. I mean, kind of terrible, but it was like what the fuck am I watching?
Tactical nuke incoming!
or if the little bird is actually a nestling rather than a fledgling. It's relatively rare that you'll come across a nestling that has accidentally fallen out of the nest, but you should be able to spot that the bird is too young to have even grown any feathers and will be dragging itself across the ground in the absence of any wing power. Only in those situations will you be doing the bird a favor by popping it back in the family nest. If you're a man, then try to do this within a time frame of around 7 seconds. Otherwise, you'll inevitably lose your concentration when you start thinking about paddling up Crocodile Creek, Danny. Okay, I'm interrupting the video. Very important announcement from today's glorious Spencer? Who's Spencer? Sponsor! Squarespace. Don't click that fast forward button. I know you're thinking, Simon, I've heard you talk about Squarespace a million times. Why? Why do we have to go through this again? Well, I'll tell you why. Because maybe you haven't taken action yet. Maybe you've got that dream of starting a website. Maybe you've got a little business, a little crafts business you want to start selling little widgets. Well, I'll tell you what, Squarespace have stores. So not only can you host, I've got a website talking about my YouTube channels. Maybe you want to have a website which sells widgets. I'm so uncreative, I can't even think of an example thing that you might want to sell through Squarespace. Maybe you want to sell little artificial plants. I mean, you probably can't. This is from IKEA. They'll probably have a problem with that. Oh God, I'm so creatively bankrupt, it's a joke. Start a store with Squarespace. Or maybe you want to start a blog and tell people about your unpopular opinions. Or maybe start a blog about things people actually want to read. Look, don't delay it anymore. Don't delay it anymore. It's time to make your dreams a reality. And when it is time to make your dreams a reality, which is now, as I just said, what am I talking about? Make a website with Squarespace. 2 options. 1, use a beautiful template. They have these, you just go in there, you see these things, you click on one you like, and and then it basically says, great, that's now your website. You want to put your name up there? And you're like, yes, I do. You want to put your picture there? Yes, I do. You want to change that text? Yes, Squarespace! And if you've also got design skills, which I don't have, you can also make a website from scratch. So you can put things where you want them to go. It's beautiful. Also, you can add, this isn't on the talking points, just something I tried recently, and shout out to Nikolai, who helped me with this. Nikolai emailed me, and he was like, Simon, I made this cool website thing. Just put this code on your site, and it will show all of the videos from your channels from the most recent one at the top, like a feed, like a combined subscription feed for all of my stuff. On my website, I'm like, Nicola, I got Squarespace. I don't know if that's possible. I'll look into it. Of course it was possible. There's something called custom code. I just start a new page on my website. I click this one box and I just paste all the stuff Nikolai made into it for me. Bada bing, bada boom, and it totally works. And it's like, I don't know how to code, but Nikolai, shout out, send me all the stuff. I just paste it in, it starts to work. I mean, credit to Nikolai, but also to Squarespace. So when you're ready to get started on the next website project of yours, like I was, like you should be, go to squarespace.com/blaze and you'll get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain, which is obviously brilliant. And now back to today's video. SOS is an acronym. This one actually comes up as a question during the pub quiz down at the... Danny, is that your local pub? Are you doxing yourself, Danny? People are going to show up at the Friday looking for you, mate. You want to bleep that one out, Sam? Oh, shit. Our team didn't win that night. We came 9th, which was a bit weird as there are only 8 teams competing. I've got to know if this is actually close, because I know where Danny lives.
A few moments later.
Ah, it is! It's a real place! Sam, definitely bleep out Danny's local pub. Jesus, Danny. Our team didn't win that night. We came 9th, which was a bit weird as there are only 8 other teams competing. But I think we were placed below the random drunk who wandered in and blurted out a correct answer before collapsing onto the jukebox. The question was this: what does the acronym of the Morse code distress signal SOS stand for? Well, everyone says it stands for Save Our Souls, but I happen to know, as we're about to find out, that it's not actually an acronym for anything. It's just an easy thing to type on Morse code.
You're just ruining it. Look at my lips. You're ruining it. Ruining.
Popular answers include Save Our Souls, Save Our Ships, Stop Other Signals, Survivors on Ships, Spasity od Smerti, Jesus, Russian from Save from Death, and Save Our Sausages. Yet, I'm thinking about sex again. It hasn't been easy for 7 seconds. Yet despite the fact that SOS is often written as an acronym complete with periods, it's nothing of the sort. It might be an ambigram or a backronym, but it's definitely not an acronym, and it's not meant to stand for anything at all. One of my favorite backronyms is ETOPS, which is something you see on planes, written on the nacelle of the engine. And it's basically something that stands for, I don't know, but it's for planes making really long journeys. And the backronym is engines turn or passengers swim, because it means there's, these planes fly far away from land, and if all the engines fail, it's like they can't get to somewhere to land quick enough, and they end up in the ocean and the passengers swim. It's like, holy shit. Owen Cox's wife was one of the many people who mistakenly believed that SOS stood for Save Our Ships, and this is how she came up with the name for her husband's new range of cleaning pads, Save Our Saucepans. But at the beginning of the 20th century, nobody could quite agree on what the official Morse code distress signal should even be. In 1904, the UK went with CQD. I didn't know that. The letter D was already commonly used to indicate distress, and CQD came to be recognized as all stations distress. But the Germans preferred SOS, or to be more specific, they preferred 3 dots followed by 3 dashes followed by 3 dots. Boop, 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 boop. You're welcome. Without any initial relevance to the alphabet. The problem is that the world needed to agree on a universally recognized distress signal, as it would get quite a bit confusing if each country was using its own different version. At the 1906 Berlin Radio Telegraphic Conference, which sounds like an absolute blast, the world finally agreed to embrace the German idea, as it could be sent very quickly. It needed very little power to transmit, and the sequence was utterly meaningless and unlikely to be mistaken for anything else. The distress signal would later become more commonly known by the letters in the alphabet that the simple sequence just so happens to represent, SOS, but no thought was ever given to this being any kind of acronym. It did, however, evolve into a backronym, as popular meanings were later added to the letters to create an abbreviation that was never originally intended. It took a little while for everyone to fully adopt the new universal signal. When the Titanic found itself in a spot of bother in 1912, British telegraph operators were still sending out a mixture of both SOS and CQD signals, and it's believed that the confusion ultimately led to the phasing out of the CQD signal. But even though it was more by coincidence than design, SOS turned out to be the perfect 3 letters for a distress signal, even outside of wireless telegraphy. The fact that SOS is both a palindrome and an ambigram, so it looks the same backwards and upside down, means that it can be easily recognized from above at any angle when you're spelling it out on the sands of a deserted island or in the gravel of a basement floor. Danny, no one's ever going to see that. Please. Spinach makes you strong like Popeye. To finish, no one believes this. Everyone knows this is famously a myth. To finish off, we're cramming several different myths into one single serving. Everyone remembers that Popeye the Sailor Man, first introduced to the world as a comic strip character in 1929, instantly boosted his strength and grew bigger muscles by downing a whole can of spinach. This always came in handy whenever the roguish Bluto needed a good beating after he kidnapped Popeye's alarmingly fickle girlfriend, Olive Oyl. Yet again. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that we should be seeking our nutritional advice from a comic strip character in the first place. I can remember my own parents urging me to eat my spinach so that I'd go up big and strong like Popeye from the animated shorts regularly wheeled out on television. This is just a way of parents getting their children to eat shit that they don't want to eat. Even as a very young kid, I wasn't buying it. Besides, I didn't want to be like Popeye. Popeye, what's that TV show? It was so good, where Popeye goes to the doctors, and because he's got these bizarre muscles, and the doctor's like, "Is it Family Guy?" And he's like, "They're tumors, Popeye." How could you not think they were tumors? They're very, very unusually shaped, Popeye. You've got months to live.
And the speech thing and what you're doing with your eye? You had a stroke about 7 years ago.
He talked funny and his girlfriend kept running off with thug sailors, but had Popeye himself been misled by mistruth? Or had at least his creator been one of the many victims of a massive misconception that spinach is a superfood which makes the body stronger because it's exceptionally high in iron? Are superfoods even really a thing? I thought that was just some bullshit marketing term. It's just nonsense, right? It's like, eat your chia seeds. And it's like, they're just healthy. Can't we just call them healthy? Why do we have to call them a superfood? They've got antioxidants. Those aren't real. Stop it. Of course, the leafy green vegetable is bound to be a healthier alternative to the doner kebab. It's a great source of vitamin A, vitamin C, protein, calcium, and potassium. It tastes bloody awful, but you can't have it. I like spinach. Wait, what's wrong with spinach? Spinach is delicious. I get why people don't like Brussels sprouts. I get why I like them, but I get why people don't. But spinach is a tasty vegetable. And you can also have spinach leaves when they're not cooked in like a salad and shit. It's also good. This is like that steak and rice thing. People were like, Simon, in Korea, we eat steak and rice all the time. And I'm like, all right, Jesus Christ, I didn't know. I mean, I'm not sorry, but because it's not offensive, but I said I think it's weird that people eat steak and rice. But the nation of Korea was upset with that one, apparently.
You just gotta eat the lettuce. Just straight up eat the lettuce.
There's even a bit of iron in there too, but nowhere near the amounts that most people seem to believe. And a curious story later emerged, which explains how a misplaced decimal point from nearly 150 years ago is to blame for the inflated reputation of spinach, as reported by dozens of media outlets. The story goes that a German chemist by the name of Erich von Wolff was examining the contents of several green vegetables in 1870. He discovered that 100 grams serving of spinach contained 3.5 milligrams of iron, but when he was transcribing the data into his notebook, he put the decimal point in the wrong place and accidentally turned the 3.5 milligrams into 35 milligrams.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
And despite the fact that this would be roughly the equivalent of digesting a paperclip, 35 milligrams became the accepted figure until somebody finally rechecked Erich von Wolff's maths in 1937. And people still continued to believe that spinach was packed with iron long after this date because they paid more attention to the original findings and the Popeye cartoons rather than the quietly relabeled cans. And here's the funny thing though, that whole story turned out to be a myth too. When Dr. Mike Sutton conducted his own intensive research in 2010, he found no evidence whatsoever of any decimal point error. It's true that German scholars were using analysis techniques that have since been discredited, but then so was every other chemist in the world at the time, and it was this global cock-up that led to the universally agreed false findings. Incidentally, Popeye rarely ate spinach in the original comic strips, and when he did, it was the vitamin A content that he promoted rather than the iron. It was the later animated shorts that transformed spinach into the Sailor Man's instant muscle-growing gimmick. But again, there was no mention of iron. Still, perhaps those cartoons should be commended for showing children a character who gets his superpowers from eating vegetables rather than from a scientific experiment gone wrong or from getting bitten by a radioactive spider. After all, spinach might not give you instant muscles like Popeye, but it's still better than snacking on pizza down in a filthy sewer. Oh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is that the reference? I never really watched that one very much, but I think I get that. And it's widely reported that Popeye was directly responsible for boosting sales of spinach by a third in the US. God damn, the power of Popeye. That's probably another myth, though. Oh. What a disappointing end to today's episode. Thank you, Danny, for this. Thank you, Sam, as well. Thank you for watching, dear viewer. And I shall see you next time. I'll link to one of our other videos, a previous false facts on the screen now. Check it out if you want more of this. Enjoy. And I'll see you next time.
Stay!